Welcome to A Pro-Wife Story. Today I'm sitting down with Vicki Gray, wife of former Carolina Panther Derwin Gray, who now is the pastor of one of the fastest growing churches in the U.S. Stay with us for this inspiring story.
Until you receive the grace that you need, it's impossible to give it to other people. When I realized that God knew everything I had ever done and He still loved me, that's when I got it. And I realized I need His grace every day. I need it to live my life every single day.
Michaela Scurlock presents A Pro-Wife Story, featuring Vicki Gray.
Vicki, I'm gonna fast forward because I know you. I've known you for so many years, so this is my advantage, and I'm so thrilled to sit down with you. Derwin and you guys met in college at BYU. Both of you were athletes and very well-respected athletes. And you met in the locker room. Well, no, not locker room. That would be kind of creepy, actually.
That would be really weird. Yes.
You met in the
weight room,
right?
Was the first time.
Right. And then you guys, from what I know, had a first date, and it was Derwin, Vicki, and your friend.
And my roommate. Yes. And all three of us were sitting in the front of a Honda CRX, driving to an off-campus dance. So
right then and there, you had to know that he must really like you, or he was a little freaky, because most guys won't go out and on a triple date, I guess.
Right. Yes.
So you guys fell in love, and
we were immediately inseparable. We worked out together when it wasn't one of our seasons, because I was on the track team. He was on the football team. When we weren't in season, we would work out together all the time. And he says we were like peas and carrots. So I guess that means that we were inseparable.
Right. And so then you guys got married while you were still in college.
We did.
And then tell me a little bit about that. When you get married in college, does that mean that you get, I mean, both of you were very well-known athletes and very respected. Did you guys get fancy housing or a nice apartment? How did that look?
And a lot of times people will ask us, you actually got married in college? Because I think at the typical university that's unusual, but because we were at BYU, which is a Mormon or LDS school, a lot of the students actually get married in college, and they have married student housing there. So it was not fancy at all. I think that our apartment was 425 square feet, and we rented chairs for like $0.25 a month. I think our couch was $8 a month. So it was just like a one bedroom. It was kind of like a ghetto apartment, but in a safe area right under the beautiful mountains of Utah. So.
Right. So then when this day came, and I'm referring it to the draft day, because now you're married and Derwin is being drafted. I'm sure you had expectations for that day. I mean, there were certain things that you probably were knowing about and certain things that you didn't know about. Tell me a little bit about that day.
So I grew up a huge football fan and a huge professional football fan, and growing up in Montana, we didn't have any professional teams. So I knew what the draft was. I knew quite a bit about football and everything. So, but that was back in the day when the draft was 4 rounds on Saturday and 4 rounds on Sunday. And we sat through the first day on Saturday. My sister and her husband were there with us, and we just kept, waiting. Is the phone gonna ring? Is the phone gonna ring? And the funny thing was, on that first day, as we were waiting, that was back in the day when the phone was attached to the wall. Do you remember that?
Right, yeah.
I do. It was before cell phones.
Right.
And Derwin's mom kept calling, and she'd say, "Have you gotten drafted yet? Have you gotten a call yet?" And he'd be like, "Mom, I can't answer the phone because you keep calling me," and we didn't have call waiting at this point. Right. And so he would be like, "Get off the phone." And it was nearing the end of day 1, and we thought, okay, this is probably, let's pack up, this is probably the end of the day, we'll just like go get something to eat or whatever. And as we were nearing the end of the day, he got a phone call, and it was the Indianapolis Colts, and they just said, "You've just been drafted as the 92nd selection." And this was not long after the Colts had moved from Baltimore. So when he said the Colts drafted me, I was sitting there going, Baltimore? Oh, Indianapolis, And so I'm not familiar with the Midwest at all. So that was kind of how the day went. It was very surreal. And of course it was exciting.
What do you do when that happens? Do you celebrate? Do you go out? What happens?
of course, after that, it was one phone call after another. It was, and of course, you have to do that at home because the phone is connected to the wall. And I think it was just surreal for us. It was also kind of a huge victory because while he had a great college career, he didn't get invited to the combine, and he didn't get invited to play in any senior bowls, and there was other guys on the team that did. And so it was just really discouraging because it was like, wow, he set records in college, and we were like, okay, maybe not, maybe it's not going to happen. And so it was just a very exhilarating feeling to kind of go, you had a great career and people noticed, and the Colts took a chance on him. So it was crazy.
That's so exciting.
And it was fun, yeah.
When we get back, I want to talk about that transition, that transition from college to NFL, and also the transition, what that meant for you as Vicki directly.
More of a pro wife story right after this. A pro wife story continues with Michaela and Vicki Gray.
All right, so NFL, here we come. You're in Indianapolis, you arrive, you're transitioning, but you're not just transitioning to now being in the NFL. I want to know, what was that transition like for you? I mean, Vicki, you were known in college as Vicki the valedictorian, Vicki the star athlete, and all these things. And now you are Vicki, Derwin Gray's wife, right? What was going on inside of you? How did you deal with that?
So it was really a struggle for me. And sometimes when I verbalize it, it sounds selfish, but I was used to being known for who I was, and I was used to being known for what I had accomplished. And all of a sudden I was just Derwin Gray's wife. That's still a huge honor. Like now I'm like, that's fantastic. But as I think I was 21, as a 22-year-old, I was like, but what about me? What about the things I've done? And that does sound now, I'm like, wow, that doesn't sound very good. But that really was my mindset at the time, because I had worked hard to accomplish the things that I had accomplished. And so that first year was really tough. It was really tough for both of us, really, going from, you're at a university where you're very well known. You can't walk on campus without people coming to talk to you or ask for like his autograph. But people knew who I was too from track and field. And so transitioning into people not even, giving you a second look, that was hard. It was also difficult because you're going from college is fun, and football in college is really fun, and then now you're transitioning into football as a business.
I have to ask this question. Was it more difficult, or did it even, matter, the fact that you guys were in a biracial relationship?
That was, I was really shocked when we moved to Indianapolis. Being in Utah, now granted, it's not very diverse in Utah, but I think that you sort of get like a pass when you're athletes, and when you're around the athletic department, it's very diverse in the athletic department. So that was our world, that's what we were used to. And when we moved to Indianapolis, I was shocked at the racism that we experienced. I remember reading in the newspaper that there was going to be a KKK rally on the steps of a courthouse somewhere just in a small town outside Indianapolis. I literally called my sister and I said, I do not know where I am. What just happened? Like, did I just get transported back 50 years?
Did you have any encounters directly other than just reading?
We did. Sadly, a lot of the players on the teams were the worst ones. That I was completely shocked by that. There was at one point, we were at a Christmas party and we were sitting down at a table, and everyone else at the table, there's probably 8 people at the table, everyone else at the table, they were all same ethnic background marriage. So it was like a white couple or a black couple, and we were the only one that we weren't both white or black. And a couple came in and walked around the table and shook everybody's hands but ours. Just, it was so blatantly obvious, and we knew this guy had a history anyways, of he struggled with that.
What goes through your mind? I mean, you're so young and you're dealing already with this transition, and now you're wanting to fit in, you're wanting to make friends. What goes through your mind?
I think I was just shocked. Like, I just didn't think the world was like that, and I was naive, I guess. And then number 2, because I'm very strong-willed. I have a very rebellious nature. It made me angry. And then it kind of made me think, well, all right, I don't need you to be my friend. But it also kind of made me want to set out to prove, like, we're all the same. We have different skin color, but we're the same on the inside. And so I think even, you know, I know we'll get to what we're talking about, what we're doing now, but that even goes back to then when I'm like, I can't understand treating people differently because of the color of their skin.
Right. Were you hurting, or? You seem so strong.
Yeah.
You know, you make me feel like, oh gosh, you know, I just kind
You know
of
what?
pushed it away and I moved forward.
Yeah. No, I think it's hurt that you cover up with anger. I think deep down it hurts. Like, I can't believe you'd reject me because I'm white and my husband's black. Like, that hurts. But I think my go-to is cover it with anger. Yeah. And I think probably a lot of people do that.
Right. Yeah.
But I think it is. It's deep down, it's hurt. It's rejection.
Yeah.
It's you're rejecting me because of the way I look.
Right.
And we all want to be accepted, right?
Right,
and
we do.
So I think deep down it did hurt, and then that caused me to be very angry about it.
But you dealt with it very well, because things started getting a little bit better. And you kind of started to fit in, right, a little bit, and you ended up, I guess, enjoying your time at the Colts, making some friends.
We did. Some of our close friends we met at the Colts, and that was, being at the Colts was a real instrumental time in our lives. While he was playing football, I was actually working in the inner city in downtown Indianapolis. I worked in a health clinic as a registered dietitian. And so I made great friends there, and then we made great friends that were on the Colts team, but they were people that were really instrumental in our lives because he played there at the Colts for 5 years. And so the first couple years, it's like, woohoo, this is exciting, and you're kind of trying to find your way. But then after about year 4, you're kind of like, all right, is this all there is to life?
Right.
We got the free cruise.
You got the house, you got the car.
We got the car. It seems like there should be more to life than this. Because you come home from the cruise, you got to face real life again, right?
Right.
And so I think that really just set us both really searching and looking for more. And God planted people around us that could point us to more.
And I know this is emotional because this was a change in your life. This is when you accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior. So things changed from there. And
so I think I always say, like, God set us up because you grow up thinking, wow, that's like the pinnacle of life. Being in the NFL, I can't imagine anything better. And I know my husband felt the same way. And so I was like, God set us up. He was like, okay, I'm going to give you like what you think is the best thing you could ever want. And you'll see it won't satisfy you. You'll see that there has to be more. And that's exactly what happened. And as we started having this restlessness, like, okay, there's got to be more to life than this, then Derwin started getting hurt and he started experiencing injury. And he would use the words, my God, which was my body, let me down. And so from then, I think we just became hungrier for like, okay, there has to be more to life than just football. And you have that recognition, right? I believe the average NFL career is like 3 years now, and he played defensive back. It's probably even less for defensive backs because speed is so important. And so we knew, you know, this could end at any time. And you know from experience, at the end of every season, you're like, wow, are they going to re-sign us? You know, are they just going to release us? Right. Are they interested in us anymore? And so living with that kind of pressure, it was just like, wow, there's got to be more than this. And a gal at work that I worked with, she befriended me, and she said, I could tell there was something going on in you because you asked a lot of questions, about spiritual things. And then she led me in a conversation just about who God is and about who Jesus is. And that was kind of the beginning of the next stage of our lives.
A Pro-Wife Story continues with your host, Michaela Scurlock.
well, I want to talk about this because the beginning of your next stage in your life, you know, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, what you're doing right now, but I know that at that point in time, you also, you got pregnant, right? And it's tough enough to be pregnant, period. For any woman, you know, anyone will say it's tough enough to be pregnant just to be pregnant. But now you're being pregnant and your husband is in the NFL. It's a very high demanding job. He's gone a lot. But you have a third element to your pregnancy. Your pregnancies aren't the easiest.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't pronounce the condition
Yes.
that you have, but you have to help me
Yes.
out.
It's called hyperemesis gravidarum, and it just basically means excessive vomiting during pregnancy. And they don't know the exact cause of it, probably hormone related. Some people get it. It's pretty rare. Most people get what's called just regular morning sickness, like, you know, maybe the first trimester, you're sick to your stomach in the
Vicki, how
mornings.
do you deal with that? Because I mean, from what I know, and is this a condition that you can manage, or are you just sick 24/7 from the morning until you give birth?
Yes, really up until about 16 weeks, I was on home IVs. Well, I was hospitalized with both children. We have two. And I was hospitalized with both of them because I literally just couldn't stop vomiting, and then you get dehydrated. And what's tough about it is if you have a physician that says, well, just, you know, eat some saltines in the morning, you know, before you get out of bed. I know you've heard that a few times.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, yeah, tried that. That's not working. Or drink some Gatorade, you know, trust me, I've heard it all. And thankfully, we found a doctor who had other patients who had experienced it. And she put me in the hospital. They put me on IVs. They fed me intravenously and then put me on a couple of different medications. And then I finally got to go home.
Yeah, I think that's amazing because, you know, most of us who are dealing with any kind of sickness, that can make it pretty tough on you. It can, if you're not feeling good, life is not good.
Our pregnancies were probably two of the hardest things I've ever been through. And with my son, I actually went into clinical depression because
That
of
was
it.
my next question. Did it cause any kind of form of depression or any kind of, just, I guess, almost like you don't want to live, I would think. Because I know that when I have a stomach flu and it just lasts for 24 hours, it can be so bad where you feel like if I had to live with this all the time, I wouldn't be able to function.
Yes.
And I can't imagine.
That's exactly what it was like. And even though intellectually on one hand, you're like, okay, this is 9 months. I should be able to make this. Feeling like you have the stomach flu for 9 months makes you want to just be done. Like it was really hard.
So it was like a miracle to me that you got through this. And then, you know, after Derwin played for 5 years with the Colts, he was successful there. You guys, his career ended there, and you guys moved to Carolina, and Derwin signed with the Carolina Panthers. Life is great. You guys, he's going to training camp. You're selling your house. You're moving here, and boom.
Yes. So he comes here before I did. I stayed back in Indianapolis to sell the house. And when I got here, our daughter was about to turn 2, and he goes to training camp. First day of training camp in Spartanburg. First play, he's the first person in line, does a backpedaling drill and plants and pulls his calf muscle. So I was like, here we go again. You know, just the stress of that because you're talking about your livelihood, right?
Yeah.
And so he rehabs that for a couple of weeks, gets back in. The first cut that, and I think they still do it the same, but the first cut that was usually around the 3rd week of August in those days, he actually got released. He came walking through the door. We were in an apartment, and he came walking through the door and he said, well, they released me. And we just looked at each other and we were like, okay, the monkey's off our back. Like, because you're just living with that constant pressure of, are they going to call me into the office and say, hey, bring your playbook? You know, and we just had this sense of relief wash over us of, okay, now we know. Well, our house had sold in Indianapolis, so we're living in an apartment in Charlotte going, is this where we're going to stay? Or what's going to happen next? So right around that same time, my grandmother passed away. And so we flew to Montana for her funeral. And the day before we were supposed to come back, the Panthers called him, and this was in '98, and Mike Minter had a knee injury, and he had gotten a staph infection. And so they called him and they said, we need to re-sign you. We need to get you back to Charlotte. And so he flew out the day before.
And he came back.
He came back.
It's like an emotional yo-yo. It's sort of like, you know, and as a wife, you're riding his coattail, right?
Yes.
So you come back, you think everything is great, we're back. Yes, you gear yourself up to be part of the team. And then 3 games into the season, boom, he hurts his knee,
He
right?
hurts his knee in
Are you like, I throw my
Dallas.
hands up, that's
Oh,
it? Yeah.
I have to tell you, I was all kinds of bitter because I was like, okay, all right, we know what we're doing now. They want him, they need him. He's back on the team. And he was, we were playing against the Cowboys in Dallas, and him being from Texas, he had a lot of family there. It was a big game for him. And he's running down the field on kickoff, and I'm watching it on TV, you know. I'm sitting there watching the game, and I see this pile go down, and I'm like, I know it's him. I just knew it was him. And sure enough, it was.
And knowing your story, knowing that was, you know, his, I guess, last play that he played, right? Because it was a career-ending injury. And then he, quickly after that, found that he wanted to be in seminary. But my question is, he's such an oddball when it comes to that. Because a lot of guys, when they retire, they don't really know right away what they want to do. But he did. He wanted to be in a seminary. And I guess my question to you is, what I want to talk about when we come back is, did you know that you wanted to be his, you know, right wing through seminary? Like, where was Vicki at that time? So this is what I want to talk about when we get back.
Okay.
A Pro Wife Story continues with Michaela and Vicki Gray.
All right. We were talking a little bit about the break, during the break about this, and I thought it's kind of funny because I've always wondered, as long as I've known you, when Derwin decided to go into the seminary and to be in ministry, you know, you've always gone along with everything. I mean, when Derwin got drafted, you know, here came Vicki. Now Derwin is going into the ministry, here comes Vicki. Did you feel at all led to be in ministry full-time at that point in time too? Or were you just, no, I'm just the wife and I'm gonna let him do the ministry?
Yeah. You know, it's funny that you asked me that because I'm like, what did I think? I have to really think about it. But one thing that we learned when we were in the NFL was we made some mistakes where we moved forward on something without being in total agreement. And then we saw the problems that caused us afterwards. And so by the time we had gotten to this point in our marriage, we were much more willing to wait until we were on the same page. And so I think probably because I'm so strong-willed, he was like, if she is not on the same page, we're in trouble. And so so he waited, and it was something that we agreed upon. Like, we would talk about it, we'd pray about it, and we would both make sure, are we both thinking this is what we're supposed to be doing next?
Yeah, you're very organized. So I'm sure you wanted to organize.
Yeah. Control.
This too.
Yes, I'm a control freak, Michaela. So
Well,
yes, that's
I
what
was trying to be nice and call it organized because I'm also an organizer.
Yeah.
So anyway, but to make a long story short, you know, I am really wondering because after all this transition now into the NFL, now you're transitioning out of the NFL, now you're transitioning into ministry, and a lot of guys, when they retire, they get out of the limelight. You went into the limelight, just a different limelight.
Different limelight.
And then you were pregnant again, and we already know how difficult that was. And then 2004, you building your ministry, and this could be difficult for me to talk about too, because I have known you that long. You were getting some other news.
Yeah. Yep. Yes, we were, you know, 2 children. He's traveling and speaking. I'm organizing. That's kind of what we did for One Hard Time Ministries. And I started having, I had a lump on my neck right here for years. And at one point, I'd gone to the doctor like years ago, and he couldn't even feel it. But you know your body best, right? And I kept thinking something's, but I just was like, all right, it's probably nothing more, you know, I'm not gonna think about it. Well, I kept feeling it like, I really feel like it's getting bigger. And then I thought, oh, I'm just being a hypochondriac. It's not getting bigger. I'm not gonna think about it. And so one day I was driving in the car, and you know how you like shoulder check to make sure there's not a car as you're getting over. I turned like that to shoulder check, and it caught, like, I guess on a tendon or something, like the little lump did. And I was like, okay, now I know this isn't in my imagination. Like, I know I'm not making this up. And so so we go to, I was actually going back to my OBGYN for a follow-up or something. And I said, hey, can you just feel this and tell me if you feel it? And he said, yeah, I'm not really sure what that is. There's an ear, nose, and throat doctor downstairs. Why don't you just
And
go
I'm sure
see
you're
him?
still thinking like, oh, it's probably nothing, but
Probably nothing.
they
Yes.
did a biopsy and the doctor said,
Yes, we walk in after the biopsy and he says, you're not going to like this, but you have thyroid cancer. And I think at this time I was 34. And so, of course, you've got 2 small children and life just stops. It's like when the doctor's telling you this news, you're looking at him, you're talking to yourself, and you're also kind of talking to God like, wow, really? Like, what does this even mean? So it was, of course, probably besides the clinical depression and pregnancy, the biggest challenge that we'd ever faced. I think it was probably harder on him than it was on me. But as a mom, you know, you're tucking your 3-year-old son into bed and you're thinking, oh, who's going to do this if I'm not here? And at the same time, you know, there's people around you all the time that have loved ones that succumb to cancer, right? And so you're trying to keep a balanced view and you want to be strong, but it's hard to not be scared. It's hard to not be afraid that you're not going to get to be mom while they're growing up. So it was a real difficult time for us.
and I have to say this for those listening, because I did know you during that time, and I do remember how difficult that was. And I think one of the, I guess, most surprising experiences to me was that when you were diagnosed with cancer, I saw Derwin, the tough football player, the one, you know, had been fighting through all his own injuries and all the ups and downs that he had personally. And I saw him so vulnerable because I remember when he called and told us about that. So even though you were dealing with what you were dealing, he was dealing with whatever he was dealing with too, because he was afraid. I really felt like he was afraid. And yet you guys found a way to pick it up and face it, face the giant for what it is.
And I know, I mean, we wouldn't have made it through that time without our faith and trust in the Lord, because there would be times, I looked at it this way, that whenever my eyes would come down and I would look horizontally at my circumstances around me, I would be overwhelmed by them, because that's what I would see. I would see giants, I'd see wind, I'd see waves, I'd see storms. But whenever I would set my mind on things above and set my mind on Him, I would be reminded that, one, He can heal me now if He chooses to. And if He doesn't, that He promises to provide for our needs. And that means not just mine, but my kids and my husband, and that I can trust Him. And so that's where I would find my comfort, would be, I still have to trust Him regardless. And I would literally try to take literal what the Bible says of, don't worry about tomorrow, today has enough worries of its own. And when you're dealing with treatments and surgeries and things like that, is so true. And when I would get into trouble is when I'd let my mind get away from me, and I would start looking horizontally at the things around me. And then I would be overwhelmed by fear. And it really was a time of us, and thankfully, you know, the Lord chose to use the doctors and the medicines and all that, and has healed me, and I'm cancer free. And that was 12 years ago. And I still remember you and your family sitting for my entire surgery, even with little kids, sitting outside of the waiting room supporting my husband. And to this day, that's one of my fondest memories of what relationship that we have, that support of sticking together.
And there's not another place that I would have wanted to be that day, because I remember that life was so vulnerable, and I recall that time very well.
Yeah, me too.
More with Michaela and Vicki Gray when a pro-wife story returns. A pro-wife story continues with your host, Michaela Scurlock.
Because you are in ministry. And because I guess everybody thinks you may have it together, because that's what people assume. They assume, they get through the NFL, which has its ups and downs. They get through dealing with the racial aspect of their relationship. They get through these rough pregnancies, injuries. They get through cancer. Someone looking in from the outside, may assume that you guys have the perfect relationship. Like Derwin and you, the rest of us, we don't have it together because we argue, we have disagreements. Please tell me, you guys just don't come home and everything is holy,
We float on clouds, and our children say,
and you just,
what would you want us
quote
to do?
scriptures, and everything is so perfect because you are in ministry.
Right. And I think if there's anything that I have learned is that we, especially women, do this, is I believe we compare our insides with other people's outsides, right?
Yeah.
Because I know the things I struggle with. I know my hurts, my fears, my pains, but if it's someone I don't know theirs. And I look at the outside and I think they have it all together. Look at their kids. They act so perfect. And so, no, I was laughing thinking about this because I'm like, where do I start with our struggles and our weaknesses, right? Because we're just like everyone else. And
So you do argue.
we do argue. Oh man, we've had some doozies, I will just tell you. And that was, we've had to learn to fight fair, to argue fair, and to do our best to honor each other while arguing, because you're gonna disagree.
Yeah.
Like, you're two human beings.
Who is more
in the
stubborn?
same space.
I really want to know
Ooh,
this.
who's the most stubborn? He is. No, I don't know. I can say that because he's not here. I have to go with, in the long run, probably me. Yeah. I'm probably a little more strong-willed when all is said and done.
And that's really hard to believe for me, even as long as I've known you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he actually gives in?
Well, it might be about 50-50, Michaela. I think it, depending on the topic.
Okay. All right. I've seen him.
Yes. We can both be, and I think that's just it, is no longer how long you've been married, because we've been married over 24 years now, and we were together for 2 years before then. And of course, I was 7 when we started dating. That's why,
I get it.
You get it.
I get it.
But I think that even then you realize you're really only a step away from that knockdown, drag out argument, and that's why you have to constantly keep on the forefront of your mind of thinking of other people first and not thinking of yourself first all the time, because I can be very selfish, and it's almost harder as the kids get older because you do get more space and you do get more time, and so then you find yourself almost being more selfish than when everyone's young and you're like constantly in servant mode, right?
Well, and you, like I said, now, Derwin is the pastor of Transformation Church, and that's a whole new chapter in your life. It's a very large church. It's one of the fastest growing churches in the United States. And I think that's huge. That's absolutely huge. And you are now the pastor's wife, right? And what role do you have at church?
Okay.
What is your role?
So we started Transformation Church 6 years ago, and there was 3 of us that planned the vision and the values and all that. And so ever since then, I've been on the executive leadership team. And right now I do a lot of strategy and culture and leadership development. And so that has been really, it's been another kind of difficult chapter, rewarding chapter, but difficult. As you know, Michaela, we are an intentionally multi-ethnic church.
Right.
We're also intentionally multi-generational. And we also are very intentionally diverse socioeconomically, because we really want our church to represent what heaven's going to be like. And when we get to heaven, there's not going to be like a black section, a white section, a Latino section, and an Asian section. God's word says that every nation, tribe, and tongue will bow before him and worship him. And so we want to take literally on earth as it is in heaven. And so we've taken heat for that. And there are people who
How does that look? How do you take heat? Like on social media or how?
social media. There are people that will come and go, I'm not comfortable with this. This isn't my idea of church. When we first started, there were other leaders of other churches that really questioned us, like, it's not going to work. Why are you doing this?
This is shocking me. I think I feel like you, when you went to, Indianapolis and read about the KKK rally, I'm shocked that you would have actually other leaders calling you and questioning what we all ought to be striving for.
Yes,
It
seems
seems
like
so
common
logic.
sense. Yes, it seems so logical to
and
us.
sadly, and I commend you guys not only for I can't say for doing it because it's natural. It's what it needs to be like, but for talking about it and making people aware, because we hear a lot about professional athletes when they are doing things that may not be so positive.
Right.
And we hear that on the major news, 24/7. If someone does something that they shouldn't have done, we will hear it from the morning till at nighttime.
Yes.
But if a guy does something, like Derwin or many others, sometimes we don't hear about it at all. Or we might hear about it, at the very end of the 5 o'clock news. And so it's important because that's the essence of your message. And and when we come back, what I want to talk about, and I wish we had more time, but I know we're going to run out of time at some point here. But what I do want to talk about when we come back is Vicki, the pastor's wife.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to have to wrap it up. And I hate that. I absolutely hate it because I want to talk to you for much longer, but I want to ask you this very important question. At the beginning of our talk, you mentioned to me that it was a challenge to transition from being Vicki, the athlete, Vicki, the successful student, to all of a sudden being Vicki, the wife of Derwin Gray. I can't help but ask you this. I mean, you are Vicki, the pastor's wife. But how have you adjusted to that? What is your role?
So I would say that's been a real journey for me. Partly it started out with when Derwin said he felt like I was calling him to be a pastor. So we didn't grow up in church. So my first experience when he said, God's called me to be a pastor, I'm being intelligent, I'm putting 2 and 2 together going, that makes me a pastor's wife, right? And I'm thinking...
And you're supposed to be perfect.
Yeah. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, what does a pastor's wife do? And so my first go-to was, okay, I don't sing, I don't play any musical instruments, and I'm probably not going to do well taking care of the kids in the kids ministry. And so what in the world is a pastor's wife supposed to do? And so that was kind of the first part. And, whenever I'd say something to Derwin, he'd say, just be you. Like, God wants you to be you. And I struggled with that because I'm like, no, I know there's a formula for this, right? Like, what is it? And it was interesting because I did come up against, I don't want to say opposition, but I found very few pastors' wives that were wired like me, that wanted to be in the thick of things. They wanted to be planning and strategizing and, doing, getting down and working in the mud. And they were like, no, you handle that. I'll take care of the kids and be home or whatever. And not that that was still an important role, don't get me wrong. But I was like, no, I'm a part of this. Like, we're a team. And so I would question myself a lot. And I would think, well, maybe something's wrong with me. Like, why do I want to be this involved in it, but I just know the way that we're wired together. He's like high vision and I'm strategy. And so when he casts vision and he'd say, I think we need to do this. This is what I see. I automatically go to, okay, this is how I see we're going to get there. And so I think God was taking us through this journey of me going, him telling me, I made you this way. Stop looking at how everybody else operates, how everybody else works or serves or where their focus is, and do what I'm calling you to do.
And that's why I say you seem to have it so together. I'm sitting here going like, yep, she got it. Yep, she took her role and she accepted it, most of all. Because some people wouldn't. Some people just wouldn't because they're selfish. But you did. You always have, as long as I've known you. And I've always admired that about you. I don't know if you remember, but several years ago you shared with me one thing. You said, you can't give away what you don't possess. And do you remember what you were referring to?
No.
Well, thanks for being honest.
I've said that a few times. So.
That's good. Well, it meant a lot to me because when you did share it, you were talking about grace.
That was going to be my go-to, but then I thought I could have said something else.
Well, and for me, that means so much because that's just who you are. You know, that should be, you're the poster child for grace. And like, tell me, do you have any weaknesses or anything?
Gosh.
I mean, anything,
Michaela.
any struggles?
Yeah.
Is there anything that, you want to leave with us that all of us, the rest of us watching and listening to you, we can feel like, we feel much better because she's struggling with this too?
So first thing is telling you that I didn't grow up in church. You can only imagine what my life was like before I became a Christian. So you are looking at the poster child of someone who needed grace. I made so many poor choices all throughout growing up. I didn't know the love of Christ.
I mean,
oh my gosh, I was a partier. I was wild. I was telling my daughter the other day how, as a small child, I shoplifted from a store. She was like, "You stole?" But I mean, I was young, and so. But I made so many bad choices, and some of those impact other people, so I can't really say them, like.
Right.
But I was, like the Apostle Paul said, he was the chief sinner. That's how I felt. When I realized that God knew everything I had ever done my whole life, and he still loved me, that's when I got it. That's when I went, now that's grace. And to use that statement, you can't give away what you don't possess. Until you receive the grace that you need, it's impossible to give it to other people because we're afraid to see ourselves as weak and needy, and so we always see ourselves as better than the next person. But when we see that it's level at the foot of the cross, that we're all weak and needy, that we all need him, then all of a sudden I can be comfortable in knowing I don't have it together. Like, I yell at my kids like the next person does. I get into arguments. I act controlling and I micromanage, and my family looks at me and is like, "Would you stop controlling us?" I mean, that happens to me like a lot. And I realize, wow, I need his grace every day. I don't just need it so that I know where I go when I die. I need it to live my life every single day.
Thank you so much for keeping it real, because I think you saying that means so much to everyone listening. Because if anyone out there thinks that they have it all together, they don't.
They're confused.
And for those of them who think that they are lost because they don't have it together, there's hope.
There's
for all
so much
of us.
hope. There's so much hope. The people that know they're sick are the ones that go to the doctor, right? And I think when we recognize just how needy we are and just how we can't do it on our own, and how much we need God, and that's when he comes to our rescue.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been so fun.
Thanks.
You've been watching A Pro-Wife Story, presented by Michaela Scurlock and the Carolina Panthers.